All right. Yeah. So we're on Unit 1, Lesson 12, Synthesize Information. Okay. And let me make sure I get my list up here in case anybody else joins class. Yeah, we already got a couple coming in here. Make sure I don't forget anybody. Okay, so lesson 12, Unit 1, Synthesize Information. Okay. And hopefully it starts for me. Okay, it's taking its time. Okay, so in today's lesson, we'll be able to, after today's lesson, we'll be able to define the term synthesize and generate new ideas by synthesizing information. All right, we'll see what that's about here in our audio. Let's take a look.
As you learned in lessons 10 and 11, you can draw conclusions and make generalizations by combining inferences. Combining or synthesizing information from one source or multiple sources may lead you to an entirely new idea that goes beyond the text and that you can apply to other situations.
And that's the root of synthesizing is, that's the root of the idea. Combining multiple ideas to create a new one. So, and the word synthesis or synthesizing, it's, there's a chemical process, right? There's a scientific definition for that word too, and it's very much related. So I don't know if you guys have covered photosynthesis yet. If you talked about photosynthesis yet in science, it's the same idea actually, because it's, in science, plants take sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water, right, to create food. They synthesize that into food. Same kind of idea here. You take, in this case, we're going to look at maybe multiple passages, or before we would take, like we're learning the main idea from this little paragraph or this passage or this sentence. Now we're thinking about larger bits of information and in fact creating our own out of those bits of information. So that's part of the idea with synthesis there. All right. Let's see, Etta, you want to read for us? Federal workers can be fired.
Okay. Federal workers can be fired. In the 2009 fiscal year, 11,275 federal employees were fired for poor performance or misconduct. In addition, a survey of federal managers by the U.S. Merit Systems Protection Board suggests that besides those who are formally terminated, there are a sizable number of employees who voluntarily leave after they are counseled that their performance is unacceptable. Still, the myth persists that incompetent federal workers cannot be fired. From the Washington Post opinion piece, 5 Myths About Federal Workers by Max Stier, 2010.
Okay, you remember we read this before, right? We saw a different piece of that same article on myths about federal workers in some of our former lessons. See, Tracy, would you like to read the one passage on the other side here? Government is not growing.
Yes. Government is not growing, not including the U.S. Postal Service. The federal government employs 2.1 million people. The workforce is now slightly smaller than it was in 1967 at the height of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, and today there are 100 million more Americans to serve. In the 1990s, Bill Clinton reduced the workforce by nearly 350,000 to 1.8 million. Under George Bush, the federal workforce grew predominantly because of both 9/11.
9/11, yeah.
9/11.
Terrorist attack, yeah, post 9/11.
Homeland security demands and the war in Iraq and Afghanistan from the
Okay.
Washington Opinion Beast.
Yeah. So same piece, right? 5 Myths About Federal Workers by Max Dyer. And what it says under our underlined, or for our underlined sentences here, right? So the author draws a conclusion about the firing of federal workers. So this conclusion helps you understand the author's point of view on federal workers. So, just going with the title and everything else we know about the piece, right? That there's a myth that persists that incompetent federal workers cannot be fired. And then it's talking over here, same kind of thing about the workforce is now slightly smaller. Bill Clinton reduced the workforce, all these underlying points. And then for our text box, it says, on the basis of the facts and details in this passage, you can make a generalization about the size of the federal government. This generalization can help you understand the author's point of view about whether the government is too large. So, think about all those other tools that we've learned, we can start seeing, this idea forming. Okay, on one side, going back to the whole idea about the passage. So the federal government is not growing. And also, parallel to that, there's a myth that you can't fire incompetent federal employees. So, what else could we possibly draw from that? How could we synthesize that information? All right, so move over to your quiz now. Lesson 12, Unit 1. And it also says here, making exceptions. So when you determine the author's point of view, you can make a reasonable assumption about what the author might think about a subject, even if these thoughts are not stated directly, right? So that's what we're doing here. So we know how this author feels about the federal government. There's a lot of myths surrounding it. The idea that it's, that they're higher paid. We learned that from not necessarily applicable here, but we learned that from the same piece before. But we see other things here being drawn, that the federal government is too big, there's too many employees, you can't get rid of them, you can't fire them when they're incompetent. So you can start assuming things about what this author might think about the same subject, different aspects of that same subject. Okay. So Latoya, you want to take question 1 for us?
Which of the statements would the author most likely agree? Is it C?
Yeah, there you go, C. He's definitely, I don't like the kind of pro and anti-camp, use like that, but he is sort of, he does support the idea that the federal government, the size of the federal government may not be our issue a lot of the time, right? The number of federal employees might not be the issue. And that would suggest then, right, you can make this, synthesize the information we learned from those passages and consider, in fact, he would probably consider that firing federal workers would not be the best way to balance the budget. So C is in cat for number 1. Okay. Let's see. And there's only 2 here. So we got like several little passages here. I'm just going to call you guys out and read one of the passages, and we'll go on to the next person. Sasha Gay, you want to read the renewable energy in the United States part?
Okay. Renewable energy in the United States. Unlike the fossil fuels, which are exhaustible, renewable energy sources generate and can be sustained indefinitely. In 2012, consumption of renewable sources in the United States totaled about 9% of all energy use nationally. About 12% of US electricity was generated from renewable sources in 2012. The use of renewable fuels is expected to continue to grow over the next 30 years, although the Energy Information Administration projects that we will still rely on non-renewable fuels to meet most of our needs.
Okay. And Grace, you want to read hydropower?
Sure. Okay. Hydropower accounted for about 7% of total US electricity generation and 56% of generation from all renewables in 2012. Conventional hydroelectric generators are among the oldest of the nation's power plants. The vast majority were built before 1980, and recent changes to hydroelectric capacity have been small.
Okay. Christiana, you want to read number 3? Or I'm not sorry, just the next passage.
Do new ideas solve old problems? That one?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so hydropower, which often involves the use of dams, is a clean, renewable energy source that can be used to produce electricity. Electricity that's about 1/3 of the cost of that produced by fossil. What's that? Please the word.
Let's see.
Is it fossil?
Where were you again? Could you read the whole sentence for me?
I'm at the FO.
Fossil.
Fossil. Is it fossil?
Yeah.
Okay, fossil fuel or nuclear power plants. Of the 80,000 or also dams in the United States, only a small percentage are hydroelectric dams. Most are non-powered. They are used for food control or storage of water for drinking and irrigation. Paragraph 2. Although they have advantages, hydropower plants also have drawback that make them unwelcome in many places. Dam block sediment, stopping it from washing over flood plants downstream and depriving farmland of nutrients. Dams affect aquatic ecosystem by changing the depth and temperature in rivers below them. The huge lake that form behind dams can eliminate beautiful scenery and force people from their homes. Paragraph 3. Still, engineers hope to expand hydropower Solution include adding hydropower plants to existing non-power dams and increasing capacity that existing at existing hydroelectric dams. A recent study states that expansion of hydropower facility could result in a 15% increase in energy produced by hydropower.
Okay, so what's happening, right? We have 3 different passages, and now we have to sort of think about them together, and what information. This is kind of what we do when I'm researching, for history, is to synthesize everything that I've collected, my evidence, my sources, and everything, and then to come up with original ideas out of that. To write my thesis or my dissertation, whatever. So here in this case, we're going to drag and drop into the chart the accurate statements about hydropower. So we got 4 statements. 3 of those are correct. So what do you think is going to be one of the first ones here?
The lack of significant growth in hydropower may be reversed.
There you go. That's one, right? We certainly saw that referenced in one of our 3 passages. What else can we say?
Although the use of renewable energy sources is expected to increase, such as energy sources have drawbacks and detractors.
Yep. And then it's going to be pretty easy to eliminate one of these. So which one are we going to go with? What's the correct one here?
We know that it's not more than half, so we should eliminate that.
There you go, right? Yeah, it's not more than half. And the other one says that it's not sustainable, but the whole idea behind those passages is that it is sustainable, right? With few drawbacks, although there is a few. Okay, so we submit there, and that's it for the quiz. We had 2 questions. We have C for number 1, and then our drag and drop boxes should be the lack of significant growth in hydropower, and then although use of renewable energy sources is expected to increase, such energy sources have drawbacks. And then lastly, more than half of the electricity generated in the United States from renewable energy sources comes from hydropower. Okay. Then on to our workbook. So let's slide over to lesson 12 workbook. Again, synthesizing is all about bringing multiple pieces of information together, creating new ideas out of them, and also things that you think of being reasonable. I'll go ahead. I'll read this one. There's going to be some more reading to do, I'm sure. So Lincoln's "A House Divided" speech. So this is before he was elected. This was in 1958 as a senator. And then we'll follow up with a speech from Johnson here. So Lincoln's House Divided speech: "A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other. Either the opponents of slavery will arrest the further spread of it and place it where the public mind shall rest in the belief that it is in the course of ultimate extinction, or its advocates will push it forward till it shall become alike lawful in all the states, old as well as new, north as well as south." And that goes along with what we've been doing in social studies. And then this is LBJ, right? This is Lyndon Baines Johnson, 1963, speaking of basically the anniversary of, I guess it would have been 150 years, since Gettysburg. And Johnson states, "In this hour, it is not our respective races which are at stake. It is our nation. Let those who care for their country come forward, North and South, white and Negro, to lead the way through this moment of challenge and decision. Until justice is blind to color, until education is unaware of race, until opportunity is unconcerned with color of men's skins, emancipation will be a proclamation, but not a fact. To the extent that the proclamation of emancipation is not fulfilled in fact, to that extent we shall have fallen short of assuring freedom to the free. Okay, and right, so it says here, looking at that, it says Lincoln uses the analogy of a house divided against itself to describe the status of the country. The idea is restated in more literal language in the final sentence. And over here in our second text box, it says Johnson made this speech to mark the anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, not Gettysburg, which ended slavery in the United States. His speech is a reflection of the status of civil rights for African Americans 100 years later. All right, so thinking about those two pieces, thinking about a house divided, thinking about, Johnson saying, the emancipation will be is a proclamation, but not a fact, right? About 100 years later. So let's see here. All right. Etta, you want to, well, let's see, right, I'll read the test taking tip here. So in answering a test question that asks you to identify information or language that applies to two passages, start by eliminating answer choices that apply to only one of the passages, right? So if you're proposed with something like this, what actually applies to both of them, but not all of them? Now, this one goes in a little bit of a different route. Etta, would you like to read question 1 for us?
Okay, which comparison best describes the situation in both passages? A, person waking up in the morning. B, a bridge stopping halfway across a river. C, a person who is blind regaining sight. Or D, a telephone call remaining unanswered.
This one's a little bit different.
C.
C, person who's blind is regaining sight. What they're looking for more is B.
B. Mhm.
Yeah, bridge stopping halfway. And, you can think about it here, right? When it comes to Lincoln's passage, it's more about we're sort of in the middle. Either we need to become all of something, because we're not going to continue this divided, nation of half slave and half free. We're going to have to go one way or the other. So it's, we're halfway. Johnson's speech hits that halfway point the same way with, we haven't completed what Lincoln set out in the Emancipation Proclamation. So B as in boy for number 1. And Tracy, let's
Yes.
see, you'd like to read number 2 for us? 2 important vaccine trials.
Yes. 2 important vaccine trials. Basic one, during the 1930s, burn country at the Michigan Department of Health developed a whooping cough pertussis vaccine that she hoped would be more effective than previous vaccines. An important part of showing the effectiveness of the vaccine involved a control group of children who did not receive the vaccine. Number 2, Cambridge assigned children to her pertussis experimental group if they came to a clinic seeking pertussis vaccination. For the control group, she found children at random from a list kept by a city health department of unimmunized children. One thought that we would see today in Cambridge experiment design were the lack of randomization in the assignment of children to either the experimental group or the control group. Randomization is a method of using chance alone to assign subjects to a control or experimental group. Researchers use randomization because it helps to ensure that differences between the two groups will not influence the outcome of the experiment. It can have randomized assignments. She could have minimized differences between the vaccinated group and the groups she merely observed. Number 3, the 1954 field trial of Jonas Salk inactivated poliovirus vaccine, IBV, was another important milestone in the use of the scientific method to test a vaccine. This trial enrolled a huge number of subjects, 1.3 million children in all, in what is the largest medical field trial ever conducted. Number 4, the short trial were a carefully designed, double-blind, randomized experiment. This means, first, that children were randomly assigned to either the control or the experimental group. Double-blind means that no one, not the child, the parent, the person who gave the instruction, not the people who assessed the child's health, knew whether an individual child received the polio vaccine or placebo injection. A placebo is an inactive substance. In this case, the placebo were a saltwater solution. The information about whether the children received the vaccine or the placebo was encoded in numbers on vials from which the interested material were taken, and it was linked to the trial's record only after the observation period were over and the result recorded. Did the trial develop polio during the observation period or not? Was the trial's experimental or control status reviewed from the history of vaccines? Or article, the scientific method in vaccine history.
All right. Yeah, go ahead and read the question for us.
The question, which statement represents the most logical conclusion about the importance of a control group in vaccine study? A control group allows researchers to compare the effects of two vaccines on two groups to test subjects. B, a control group allowed for a larger group of test subjects. C, a control group is the only way to know whether a vaccine works. D, a control group offer the comparison between those who receive a treatment and those who do not. I think D.
D, yeah. D as in dog. A control group offers a comparison between those who receive a treatment and those who do not. So it's, again, you might come across this in science. So, you know, when they do like clinical trials for drugs and stuff, they have like a control group that just gets a placebo. And, you know, whether it's a sugar pill or, you know, just a saline injection or something, they're not actually getting any of the treatment. The other side's getting the treatment. What they talk about with the double-blind study is that basically nobody involved in the study is aware of who's getting the treatment and who's getting the placebo until the end of the study, right? They have it all, you know, numbered in a certain way. And the reason is that you don't insert any bias. You know, even like if I was to do a study and I had some, you know, I was doing super soldier serum or something, and I was giving somebody a placebo, you know, I had a group that was doing a placebo. If I know who's doing that, if I'm giving it to them, I can actually, you know, influence the study, you know, not even consciously sometimes. So that's why they do a double-blind study. That way, nobody knows, you know, can influence the results. That's basically the idea there. Okay, so number 2 was D as in dog. Number 3, Latoya, you want to read question 3 for us?
It said, which situation would randomization be applicable? Applicable. D, maybe.
To A. So this case, right, that's the only one that's really an experiment, right? The other ones are different activities. But the taste testing is actually where, you know, you would actually apply some of that blind, you know, studies and randomizing. A, taste testing. Interesting, you know, choice, but yeah, it'd be taste testing. A. And let's see, Sasha Gay, you want to take 4?
Okay. Why might some people object to being part of a control group in a medical study? A, people may be uncomfortable participating in a dangerous medical study. B, people in the control group must submit to a long period of observation. C, people in the control group do not receive treatment. D, people might worry about the possible side effects of a placebo. D.
C. C is a cat, right? Because if you're in a control group, that means you're not actually getting whatever the treatment is. You're getting the placebo, right? Which is just the, you know, just a baseline. So they can compare, you know, your control group is always basically how you're comparing something in its natural state without the effects of something. So yeah, and of course, if you were, you know, if you say you're a cancer patient and there's like this new trial of some of a cancer treatment going on, you would want to be one of the ones receiving it, not part of the control group, right?
Mhm.
So 4, C as in cat. 5, Grace, you want to read 5 for us?
Sure. 5, a double-blind approach will be best suited for A, customer satisfaction survey. B, a clinical trial of a new cancer drug. C, election exit polling. And D, comparing to psychological therapies. B.
Yeah, B as in boy, right? A clinical trial of new cancer drug. And which goes right along with what we were reading, right? As far as the vaccine trial goes. That's how they're using it for medical trials. See, Christiana, you want to read this passage for us? Hydrogen power.
Okay. Number 6.
Yeah, number 6.
Which statement best explains the comparison of the future of hydrogen power with the replacement of coal and steam energy by oil and the combustion energy. Paragraph 7.
Hold on. You need to actually read the
I
passage first.
think
I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and read it real quick here. So we're talking about hydrogen powered auto rickshaws. So in January, the world's first hydrogen powered auto rickshaw took to the road on the grounds of Pragati Maidan, the sprawling exposition center on the capital's east side. The 15 blue buggies retrofitted auto rickshaws that previously used a conventional power source still give the same noisy, windswept ride. Yet there are critical differences. The tailpipe emits water vapor, heat, and scarcely any other emissions. The body is adapted to carry a tank of hydrogen gas. The motor and its injection system have been modified, and an electronic control system has been installed, developed by researchers at the Indian Institute of Technology at Delhi. Still, they refuel at a filling station in much the same way as ordinary auto rickshaws, fueled by compressed natural gas, hooking up to pumps and hoses with special nozzles. Hydrogen energy for transportation is in its early infancy, but many hope these auto rickshaws are a step toward reduced reliance on fossil fuels in developing countries where exhaust belching vehicles contribute to air pollution. Clean, efficient, and naturally abundant hydrogen has the potential to facilitate the transition to a low carbon energy future in a similar way that oil and internal combustion engine displaced coal and the steam engine, said the International Center for Hydrogen Energy Technologies. Though the initial fleet is modest, as many as 1 million hydrogen vehicles could be on India's roads by 2020, said Vivek Bandyopadhyay, an advisor to the Indian Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. That goal seems highly ambitious given the challenges to scaling up the technology worldwide, let alone in bureaucratic India. Still, given its pressing energy demands driven by economic growth, rising vehicle numbers, and worsening air pollution, India is exploring all options for alternative and renewable energy, though with varying degrees of success. The biggest hurdles to expansion are access to enough hydrogen, lack of a distribution network, and high cost relative to other fuels. While hydrogen is naturally abundant, it must be split from other elements in what are now expensive, often energy-intensive processes. It is made for industrial purposes like producing fertilizer or refining fuel, but is not produced for mass consumer use. There is little infrastructure to transport it, and fueling stations are few. Okay, and you want to follow up there, finish off our statement or our question, Christiana.
Okay, so I should read the questions again.
Just go ahead and if you know the answer, you can tell us.
Well, I think number 7.
Mhm.
Is it number 7? Number 6?
Number 6. Number 6.
Yeah, I think is B.
Yeah, B as in boy, right? Hydrogen could prove to be a more efficient fuel operating a more efficient engine. Okay, and number 7, Etta, would you like to read number 7 for us?
How might an increase in the price of oil contribute to India's having more hydrogen-powered auto rickshaws? An increase in the price of oil. A, might provide greater incentives to develop alternative fuel vehicles. B, would lead to more government money to invest in hydrogen-powered auto rickshaws. C, would encourage people to drive less than they normally would. Or D, could make oil-based fuels less profitable for filling stations to sell. C.
It's A. So thinking of the increase in price of oil, right? It's going to drive greater incentive to develop alternative fuel vehicles, which is kind of what we're seeing now, right? We're seeing more emphasis on electric vehicles as the price of gas goes up. So A for number 7. And Tracy, would you like to read number 8, question 8 for us?
Yes. Question A, which country would be most likely to show an interest in hydrogen powered auto rickshaws? A, Iceland, a sparsely populated, developed country with little traffic or pollution. B, Venezuela, a country with large oil reserve and expensive gas online. C, Thailand, a developing country with one of the world's most densely populated city. D, Papua New Guinea, a mostly rural country with few automobile. Venezuela.
So
I think
C,
Thailand.
yeah, C,
Yeah.
right? Because it's highly populated, dense population, right? So a new form of fuel would be particularly interesting for them or useful for them. So C is in cap for number 9. Latoya, do you want to read the brain and the sense of smell?
I will.
Okay, go ahead.
Smell is unique among the senses in that it enters directly deep into the brain. If we look at the major pathways traveled by the other senses, such as hearing and vision, they start at the sense organs, that is, the eyes or the ears, and move to a relay station called the thalamus
Thalamus.
thalamus before passing on to the rest of the brain. With smell, the situation is different. Rather than visiting the thalamic relay station on its journey into the brain, smell information travels directly to the major site of processing, the olfactory bulb,
Olfactory.
with nothing in between. We do not know what stopping off at the thalamus does for other senses, but it certainly means that signals generated in the other senses are somehow further away from the nexus of processing done in the brain. Could this be part of the reason why smells are both hard to put into words, but also able to trigger deeply hidden memories? Memory research has shown that describing things in words can aid memory, but it also reduces the emotion we feel about the subject. When we come up with a story about our memories, we start remembering the story as much as the raw experience. And I was from Why Can Smells Unlock Forgotten Memories by Tom Strafford in 2012, Access 2013.
All right, you want to keep going? Read the next one for us.
Okay, it says smell triggers emotions. Smell is indeed uniquely tied to emotion. Smells are processed and laid down in memory with the emotions that were experienced at the time of the memory, explains Dr. Alan Hirsch, doctor of the Smell and Taste Treatment and Research Institute. The stronger the emotional trigger and the more characteristics the smell, the more closely you'll link the two. In a survey of 985 people, Hirsch found that 84% said odors made them nostalgic, nostalgic for their childhood's baked goods, were the number of one flashback inducing odor, but preferences vary depending on where and when participants grew up. The smell of farms animals brought back a flood of memories for Midwesterners, while barbecue took the top spot for West Coasters. For older people, natural smells were most evocative, while artificial smells, including sweet tarts, vapor rub, and jet fuel, pulled the heartstrings of younger generations. And that was from the Scent in Memory, Familiar Smells Evoke Forgotten Memories by Nadia Goodman, 2011, Access in 2013. Then the question reads, according to the information provided in both passages, which generalization is most accurate? Then we have A, smells create less of an emotional response as people age. B, the description of a smell can be as powerful as the experience of a smell. C, the emotions associated with a smell tend to change as a person associates the smell with new experiences. Or D, a smell can create a powerful response before a person even places what the smell is. C.
D for number 9. Yeah, D is in dog. Okay. And let's see. I'll go ahead and read number 10 here. Number 10, according to both passages, which experience is likely to trigger the quickest emotional response? A, a photo of a person's first love. B, the smell of the cologne worn by a person's first love. C, a fragrant flower that a person smells for the first time. D, the first notes of a person's favorite song.
B.
Yeah, B
as
in
in
boy.
boy.
Yeah. That can go either way too, right? It could be a fond memory, or I think my wife, she told me Dracar Noir gives her, makes her kind of ill because of a person that she knew at some point for it. So, but I think we can all identify with that, right? There's either something that you really like, or something you have an aversion to. If the food makes you sick, right, and then you smell it, you're like, oh, I can't do that. So yeah, it goes either way. All right, so 11. Oh, well, I'll go ahead and finish these out. We only got 2 more. So according to the information in both passages, which type of positive memory would most likely be triggered by the smell of chlorine? A, the memory of looking at a photograph of a beautiful swimming pool in a magazine. B, the memory of hearing a friend's story about an exciting trip to the water park. C, the memory of enjoying childhood summer days at the local swimming pool. Or D, the memory of the smell of bleach used as a disinfectant to disguise hospital odors.
B.
D.
Dog.
C. Yeah, C.
Oh.
It's got to be a personal experience, right? So it won't be somebody else's. It'll be something that you're related to. So yeah, the memory of enjoying, and that's sort of that synthesis, right? We're thinking about a person's own experience with that smell. So C, the memory of enjoying childhood summer days at the local swimming pool. And then the last one here, the most likely explanation for the smell of jet fuel triggering an instantaneous memory is that A, the smell of jet fuel is stronger than the smell of other fuels. B, smells are not processed by the thalamus and are thus experienced very quickly. C, families traveling by air experience long airport delay. Families traveling by air experience long airport delays. D, the brain process smells more accurately than other sensory perceptions. Or E, no, go ahead. B, right?
B.
Yeah, B, smells are not processed by the thalamus and are thus experienced very quickly. All right. Yeah, so okay, that's our workbook for today. Let's run through the answers real quick for you guys. 1 was B as in boy. 2 was D as in, oh yeah, here we go. 1 B as a boy, 2 D for dog. 3 was A. 4 was C. 5 is B. 6 is B. 7 is A. That longer passage there. 8 is C. 9 is D. 10 is B. 11 is C. And 12 is B.